Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 15 of the Swiss AI podcast called This is the Year. In this one today, we're actually deep diving into the tools that we have been using as a team over the last few months. We really be looking into the tools we also thought that actually are going to be used by the team, and maybe we debunked them. But also we basically be answering the question by companies they're usually having, should they build tools in-house or should they basically be relying on external tools out there?
Forget that we also are going to mention a bit the future, because we've been doing that all along these episodes, and some of them have been accurate, some always have been accurate.
So some of the predictions.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good input.
Even if they're completely random, like 50% of them are going to be accurate. But I think we are above a little bit.
I think we have so far a pretty solid track record of identifying the tools.
Yeah.
But again, keep us accountable by the end of the year. Also, before we get started, we shoot these episodes every single week. So if we add value, give this video a thumbs up, add a commentary if you have a question, or just follow us on all the social medias. We're mostly active on YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok. Let me quickly introduce the people that already interrupted me before I even got started. But with us today, back in Europe, we have the AI magician. He is currently not building Python code much. He just returned from Brazil. Bene, how are you doing? Do you still have a jet lag or not?
Still a bit. This is my third day back in Portugal, full day. Yeah. So I still have a bit of jet lag. And I think in Brazil, I felt it more than here, because it was backwards. Now it's just speeding up time. But anyhow,
isn't the West? Which one is worse? The West one the West oriented jet lag, or the East one? So if you come back to Europe, or if you go to
because it was worse. And one of the things that I'm actually feeling here, because it's also summer already, or not yet. It's summer already here in Portugal.
Yeah, it's officially,
it's
I think
hotter.
Yeah.
It's hotter than Brazil, because in Brazil I got 42 degrees and it wasn't as hot as here. And one of the reasons is because it's more moist, the weather in Brazil, and here it's drier.
Sure. That's true.
It was way better, the weather.
I mean, in Switzerland, I think officially the beginning of summer is like 21st of June, right? So that's currently we are shooting on exactly. So it's tomorrow. I think in Switzerland today is like 33 degrees. So it's certainly summer-ish. But we're getting there. Great. Let me introduce.
We can say it's summer, because when people hear this, it's gonna be summer already for them.
Well, it's true. I mean,
we're playing with a timeline here.
Absolutely, back and forth. So yeah, you heard him already, AI wizard, which I saw a lot more than the AI magician in the last few days. So he also had some holidays, but he didn't leave the country. Joao, how is life?
Not yet. Life's good. Almost as good as this AI company's market capital. I wish I could have some of that, because we're getting very easily into the billions of dollars. And that's one of the things we'll talk about like later. These tools are growing so much, and investors are just throwing money at them. So it's really, really a booming market. And
so
we're here to
acceleration continues.
Debunk it and deconstruct it and explain it to you.
Great. Gentlemen, let's get started maybe with the first initial question, as I teased it at the very beginning. Should a company or a startup build tools per se by themselves first? And if not, which tools, external ones, should they be using for different use cases? So I'm kind of phrasing it in that sense, that we can maybe also deep dive into some technical tools that we believe are great to use as an external one, but also sales tools and maybe some general ideation / creative tools that are currently out there for you to use, and we have been probably using them for many, if not hundreds of hours in the last few months. So maybe, Joao, I'll give you the word. The high-end decision of building in-house versus using external ones, where would you draw the line?
People usually hate this answer, that it depends, but we're going to hit a few real use cases, so it makes it a bit more concrete. Imagine coding, right? Like a lot of companies have their own tech team, their own developers, and I've seen a couple companies doing their own coding agents. So these LLMs are good at coding, and they don't want to use public tools, but afraid of the code getting out and having a problem with security and compliance, and so they build their own coding agents. This is one of the use cases that I think you should not have your own. Basically, because coding agents are amazingly good, those that are available right now. You have Cursor, you had Devin, which was a bit
It
enough
lived the
of an
brief.
idea. Yeah, and we'll talk about it a bit later. But you have like Copilot from Microsoft. Like you have a lot of these coding agents that are amazingly good at what they do, and they're pretty much matching. In the general consensus, people are saying it matches junior mid-level engineers, and
I
so
do
it's not up
have
to the senior
something to
level.
say.
What
I
did you
do
say,
agree
Benny?
with that. Yeah, I do have something to kind of disagree. I do agree mostly with it, but it depends on the language that you're using.
Of course, yeah. I mean, of course, there are gonna be exceptions. There are going to be exceptions. If they were so good that the people going to college right now would be jobless for next decade, and there'll never be any more seniors. Thing is, if you're using like a bleeding edge framework, if you're building something that's completely new, then like the AI might not be as good as it at it. But for most use cases, you can use AI, and AI can at least help you. Thing is, you can have like this. The biggest, I think, two tools or two or three tools that people have heard about in terms of coding is Cursor, which is an IDE that you can just use to code whatever you want. You just say what you want, it'll code it for you. Copilot pretty much like does a very similar thing. It has an increased first functionality across time, trying to replicate what Cursor does. And you had Devin. Devin, I think, was a few months ago, and their whole idea was to replace engineering like completely and have it AI automated. And this is like I think where they failed because Cursor and Copilot are trying to augment you, right? So you have a senior engineer or a mid-level engineer coding the same thing or like equivalent of 3 or 4 different people. He's doing front end, back end. He can do it all because he has help from this AI. Evan was supposed to replace the engineer entirely, and it was, I think, a bit too ambitious. I think it was based on the premise that AI was getting so much better in very short lifespans. That didn't happen. AI is still getting better, LLMs are getting better, but not that fast, not fast enough to replace engineering completely. And so Devin has lost, I think, a bunch of the user base they used to do, but Cursor and Copilot and a bunch of different other agents, coding agents, are getting more traction. And I think it's like one of the use cases that companies should not build their own, because otherwise you're going to spend 6 months to a year to have your own thing rolling out. You're going to use it for, I'd say, 3 to 4 months, and then the company is gonna sign with Copilot or with Cursor, and you're just gonna waste a year and a half that you could have bought Cursor from the beginning, probably at a lower price.
I think it's, some good notions. The general idea is usually probably, I would say 6 to 9 months ago, many companies, most likely in Switzerland, in the DACH region, in Europe in general at least, that I've had some exposure to, talking to people, was mostly, we build everything in-house now. So this was like the notion last year. So we build our own CRM, we build our own, basically whatever software they're using in-house. We rebuild Salesforce, we rebuild all these platforms because AI is going to be, or is already, at least that was the notion back then, so good that we can rebuild everything from scratch. And they probably re-ramped the projects, they started funding them, and they probably realized it's not that easy, especially because most of the time the data is not available maybe, or you're simply lacking the AI talent, or maybe a mix of the two worlds. So I think currently maybe it's a little bit of a shift of the actually established SaaS companies, for example, like Salesforce or the other CRMs around the world. They're just implementing agentic features to it. So that's why even as a startup or as an entrepreneur, it might be even, again, now be a little bit of a bigger challenge to actually be replacing these legacy SaaS, because now they're also inducing AI components. So that's maybe just out there. So back then it was mostly, if you do a quick retro in that sense, we build everything in-house. And now I believe there is many tools actually externally available and secure and safe as well to use as a company. I don't know, Benny, if you disagree with this or you mostly are in line.
Overall, I'm in line. Again, there's use cases that you can use, other ones that you shouldn't. But the example was great from João, and I do agree. Some cases like this, you shouldn't be investing because, again, these models are getting so much better. We can see from the beginning of the year and now, they got so much better than just an update from them just replace whole features or whole projects from some companies that nowadays are failing because they're already doing it. And you just need to investigate a bit on where this is going. And we can see it's going to the agentic crowds, and they're pushing a bit to try to replace this kind of profession or to enhance the most out of it. So you shouldn't invest in these capabilities because they're going to be obsolete in a couple of months.
Yeah, I think it brings up a good point. It's mostly like you as a company or as an entrepreneur, you maybe can focus on the timeless elements that are not going away. For example, that AI, at least in the near term, is still computed in a cloud setup, most likely. So this cloud foundation, cloud engineering, cloud security, and then the interaction between the cloud and maybe potentially on-premise solutions, like all that might still be timeless. And what's not timeless is maybe the fractioning on the modeling. There might be a new model, a smaller model, or different models at the same time, and you have to focus on it from a modular perspective, maybe. What's less timeless? Like what can be maybe just been replaced? So just from the top of my head is like, what could be something?
Well, if you go to your like day-to-day work routine, there's gonna be things you spend maybe hours on that are either boring or repetitive, and those can entirely be replaced. Like if you're going through your day and you're going through your emails, seeing if you find something important, or trying to read like documents to find out one specific part of information, that can be like agitized. That can be transferred to AI. Like you're not getting out of a job, but you're getting more time out of your breakfast and probably extending lunch because the AI is doing that part for you. And so you don't have to read like 50-page PDFs or 100-page PDFs anymore. You can like pass it on to AI. You can either have your own AI agent if you're really worried about security, or you can have something like ChatGPT or Gemini reading the document for you. And you can just say, hey, get me the numbers from 2023, the second quarter, and it'll get you those numbers. And you can ask what page it was from the beginning, and it'll have it linked to those pages, so you can double check. You don't have to fully trust it. You should always double check the information, but it's way easier than reading the 100 pages.
One of the cool features that I think it could happen, it hasn't yet, it would be an assistant for meetings. Basically, to sum up the meeting and to direct if they see the meeting's going nowhere. So this will save a lot of time.
So it interrupts you live.
Yeah.
So well, you can replace Bene. Amazing.
It's actually a good idea. So basically there will be live inference on a meeting, and then when it when it reasons, no feelings for AI, but when it believes it's not going nowhere, it kind of triggers a signal, and then the meeting is over.
And not only that, but it can redirect the meeting. So it's saying this is going out of nowhere, and it can intercalate with the opinions or things were being said, and it can sum up and get to the point faster than people just sometimes talking and bashing polls.
I think you just single-handedly saved trillions of global GDP creation with a small idea. So Microsoft, if you're listening, please introduce that into Microsoft Teams. We're happy to help out.
Just call it the meeting shortener or something, like maybe less syllables, but it'll be so amazing because you can have it as rude as possible. And if people are mad at it, it's like, what are you going to do? Fire it? You can't. It's an AI. It's
exactly. So
it's timeless.
True. Meeting aligner, whatever. Some small feature you can toggle on Microsoft Teams or on Zoom. And every time you're kind of deviating from the core idea of the meeting, it kind of kicks in and it comes, please, humans, go back in line.
Yeah, or you've been talking about this the last 20 minutes. You found no solutions. Just go on. The guy who will find the solution is on vacation, is coming back tomorrow. Ask him then. But please talk about something else.
A good idea. Benna, you're always...
Oh, there's some personal pain in João saying there.
I mean, we all had meetings, okay? I think boring, overextended meetings are a universal language in the corporate world. So, I mean, it is a personal pain, but I think it's all of ours, but all of us personal pains to share. It's a collaborative thing.
But it's a good idea. Maybe if I can draw a quick summary. So technically, coding agents seem to be not an ideal use case to build in-house. There is validated and far better ones that most likely many of the corporate entities can be building. This is, for example, Cursor, put it on the screen here, and Copilot, also put it on the screen, fairly established in most of the companies and easily accessible, I think, for many, if not all, engineers around the world. Gentlemen, maybe let's pivot onto some other elements in terms of tools where I believe it again makes sense to be relying on external ones. We had this many times brought up in this podcast, the notion of vibe coding. But I think it really kicks in with an incredible benefit if you build a fast prototype. So if you have a demo to somebody and you just need to have it done over the weekend, basically, or you want to iterate faster. So these two notions, once again, you need to have a fast prototype ready, an MVP to validate certain hypotheses, features, for example, and or if you just by the time constraint or quality constraint, you can't build it yourself. You don't have a team. So this is kind of the two vectors here. I would pinpoint just two out that I've been, or actually just one that I've been using heavily, but there is another one as well. Lovable is really great and amazing for a different array of prototypes on website and applications in general. I have not used Lovable extensively because I used mostly Vercel v0, which is also, I would say, increasingly popular for corporate ready software as a services builds, basically, because again, it has a foundational layer of large language models below. It really integrates well with GitHub. So every time I'm doing, let's say, 40 to 50 prompts, so every time there's a new build, I can simply push it into a GitHub branch, which is, to me, really ideal. And it just streamlines this workflow of fast iteration. So once again, v0 and Lovable, two really great vibe coding tools, which I would not advise any company to build in-house if you can be using them as well. If I can maybe pinpoint to a third one, we talked about that multiple times as well, but I'm happy to bring it up again. N8N is the backend, kind of in the logic of AI engineering, like v0 is for the front end. So you might have a front end that's a SaaS software, for example, a CRM. You can rebuild that fairly fast with v0, and then you can talk and basically combine the backend as well from N8N, which is then basically running the GPTs of the world and Claudes of the world and Geminis of the world, basically. And this is kind of a great way to have a fast prototype, if not even a corporate ready solution. So these three tools, I think, again, technically really sound if you're a no-code person as well, that you can jump on them. Again, Vercel v0, Lovable, and N8. And gentlemen, there's also this notion of MCP. N8N also has this functionality, setting up an MCP server. How trending is this currently if we have to do a retro? Is this trending upwards or downwards?
Upwards. I think Bene had a whole list of MCP servers already on the back of his mind. But you're starting to see agents and publicly available agents that are using these MCP servers. So it turns building an agent a lot simpler. It becomes easier because an agent is the LLM with some tools. An MCP basically gives you access to any tool anywhere that it's available, that it's publicly available, or behind a paywall, but then you just have to spend a couple bucks on it. And you can start to have this. Yeah, go ahead, Benny.
Sorry, just to add up on there, because we were browsing on some agents and I was surprised on how easy it was to plug in, for instance, AI travel planner. Basically, it has some prompt for him and a Streamlit app, so it's fairly simple. And then it's just plugged in on the weather MCP server, maps MCP server, calendar MCP server, and the booking MCP server. So basically, this AI agent, it's fairly simple, as you mentioned, with MCP. And this is one of the things that we talked back then. And we really hit the nail on this one by saying this was going to be adopted and fairly used. And nowadays you can see this is the basis for building any agents.
We also, I mean, maybe I can link the video up here. We also talked about A2A, back then announced by Google. I think more or less a little bit later than MCP, but have you guys kind of seen many builds using A2A, or that's maybe less trending than MCP?
I liked what João said, so João, go ahead.
I think A2A is yet to become the next big thing, because companies are still building their own agents, and so they definitely don't want to have their own agents collaborate with agents from other companies. And if A2A is happening, it's happening behind the curtains. So it's different agents within the same company talking to each other and figuring things out that way. Because eventually in the future, what we expect to see is an agent from a travel booking company can talk to an agent in like a more local company in your destination, and they can figure out things that way. So you can have collaboration across companies. And you could see that in the future. I don't think there's a lot of, at least popular projects right now, using that. If anything, it's behind the scenes. With MCP, you could basically request something out of any tool, but that's a very simple request. To trust it to a whole new agent, I think we're still a bit far off from that, but maybe by the end of the year. And this is one of those predictions that we'll have to see in episode 30, maybe. I'll have to do the math, but maybe we'll circle back to this and start to see, oh yeah, now we have like this crazy big project using A2A. But as of yet, no, we don't have A2A as the big thing.
We cannot confidently say that it's maybe as popular as MCP. Maybe just the third notion, also to wrap up, maybe the general use of AI tools. So of course, the tools that we just mentioned now, they leverage LLMs. So underlying Versal, underlying all the tools that we just talked about, there is probably a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude model, or maybe an array and a mix of them. But we haven't really delved into kind of the individual models like a Gemini, like a Claude or a ChatGPT for standalone use cases. So Bene, maybe why don't you kick it off? Which models do you currently use for your day-to-day? I think this is always some debatable topic on the podcast, and then maybe I can wrap it up.
No, I think right now it's not that debatable because all of us know which one is the best, Gemini 2.5, and even...
I never used Gemini, but yes.
That's the thing. I was looking at the data, and people are not using Gemini. I think the two biggest companies right now is OpenAI and Anthropic. And people, like private people who are not businesses, probably won't even know what Anthropic is or what the Claude's model are, the Claude lineup is, because Anthropic has been having a really big focus on enterprise projects, and so you see a lot of projects from businesses using Claude behind the scenes, and that's where Anthropic is getting a lot of the money. And OpenAI is available ChatGPT, and so everyone knows OpenAI, everyone knows ChatGPT, the models behind that. And Google, I think they're trying to push the models. It's gonna be it is on your Android phone, and people are getting more used to it. But they're not as strong with branding, saying it's Gemini. So a lot of people are using AI on their phones, but to them it's just AI on their phones. They're not linking it to the idea of having the model named Gemini.
Yeah,
so subjectively, Bene.
All of the phones now from Samsung, so Android, and the latest update, they have integrations with Gemini all on board. And whenever you ask something through voice, it's Gemini. And sometimes people are not aware. And Android is one of the most used types of phone, and Samsung as well. So Google is going this approach more subtle, more underground, but it's being used as well.
I think for the private market, you're gonna see ChatGPT and Gemini from Google, having them being basically monopolies on the private AI market. And enterprise side is Gemini, is Claude and OpenAI again. OpenAI has been playing both sides beautifully, and they've secured like a huge contract with the US government. So they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Where is Meta landing in all this?
Meta is trying their best, and they've been a really big player in the open source.
The open source realm, Meta has been, I think, honestly, it's one of the companies that's really pushing this market as well, because they open sourced everything and they're basically giving the freedom for people to create and to explore and to do more. And that's the marvelous thing about open source. And of course, I don't like meta policies because it's meta, but with this, they have been doing a great job, and they are doing a lot of investment. I think on the last episode, we even mentioned they bought a company, Scale AI, and they're pushing this a lot, and they've been pushing some of these more techy new vibe things a lot. For instance, with the VR space, now with the AI, I think somewhere along the way they will get something, and they're not going to get something small. They're going to get something.
I mean, they are pushing a lot. I mean, they, again, as you mentioned, just for the audience, Scale is like the labeling company. So if you need training data, this has to be labeled. And Alexander Wang, I think, is the the founder of this company. He dropped out of MIT, I believe, some decade ago, or maybe correct me in the audience if I'm wrong, but he's a dropout from MIT, incredibly visionary person, and he founded Scale AI, again, providing the necessary groundwork for all the companies in the world, be it, again, Anthropic, Google, or OpenAI or Meta, to train the models, or XAI for that matter, probably as well. So without Scale AI, most of the companies would probably struggle with training the models itself. So they're kind of helping to prepare the training data sets, and then the algorithms to train the model is then mostly developed by the large players, computed on some data centers. So that's a little bit of that. So Meta moved, I would say, quite some stones when they acquired Scale AI. Also, they're poaching many talented people from OpenAI. I think it was this report, maybe I can put it on the screen here as well quickly, that they're spending north of $100 million to attract new talent and signing bonuses alone. So this is also, so Meta is really pushing a lot, again, on the frontier of open source, on the frontier of VR and augmented reality, and by acquiring now talent and also an acqui-hire with Scale AI. So Meta is definitely not sleeping and to be put on the radar here.
And the Llama models from Meta are not bad at all. The thing is, within the open source world, so you can divide the models in between the closed source, so Gemini and OpenAI and all those models, and the open source world. And the open source world, Meta is a really big player, but there is been consistently these Chinese models coming from Alibaba. We call them the Quan models or Queen models, it depends how you pronounce it. And they've been consistently just a little bit better than the Llama models. And so if you're having to choose between the two, you're going to choose like the better performance one. And so we had this Meta, like, it's been pushing a lot in the open source world, have been successful, relatively successful, doing these open source models, but there have been consistently these slightly better open source models coming from China, which has been a revelation, because you wouldn't expect China to be such a big player in the open source world so fast in the game.
So if you guys, for the rest of the year, can only use one privately, which one would you go for? Bene, you're first. Gemini. So we got one for Gemini, Schwab. Which one would you go for?
Probably Gemini. I'd use more open source, but there are some struggles. They're not as easily accessible as Gemini is.
I keep my loyalty with OpenAI since day one. I'm using ChatGPT for the rest of the year. But maybe I can segue into the last notions, more the business administration / non-technical use cases, external AI models, and also briefly mention ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT every single day, both as my doctor, psychologist, research assistant, and daily best friend. I use it for all things analysis, research, so I think it really is one of the most used apps on my MacBook, and I don't plan to replace it anytime soon. So this is certainly something I would probably not give away. The second and the third tool on the list, on the administrative part, especially if you're into sales, if you have a business somewhere in Europe or around the world, you would want to have probably some sales copy written. So there's one great tool, I put it on the screen as well for you to check out, called Poppy AI, helps you to create great sales copy. So basically just the notion of creating maybe a little bit better and well integrated into workflows than ChatGPT is. So ChatGPT can help you, and you have to send the emails just manually. And Poppy AI, like some tools like that, help you on the entire workflow of generating an orchestration of great sales copy. And associated to this, if you have a website and you not only want to see who visits the website, for which you can maybe use simple analytics, which is also a cookie-free website, basically. So check that out if you're interested on this. But I'm more referring to identifying the qualified leads on your website, so who is visiting it, but then also making sense of which of these visitors can you actually approach to sell your product or services. For that, Swan AI is really, I think, a cool idea. And these guys are also pushing the boundaries on large language models. Again, put it on the screen here. For the more administrative part of a business, usually highly relevant as well. Once you have built your product or your service with all the tools we have mentioned, the Versals, the N8Ns, the Pythons, and the LangChains of the world, you would want to sell it with a Swan AI, with a Poppy AI, or with ChatGPT for example. Gentlemen, which one are the dropouts? Which one did we predict are going to be the high flyers of 2025 and have so far disappointed?
Talked about Manus.
Manos, I think, has been one of I think Manos was in line with what I mentioned in the beginning with Devin, like trying to outright replace people, and as of now, that's still a bit hard. And so, if you're that ambitious, you have to come up with some new strategy because it just doesn't work out of the box. Not good enough. Not yet.
So Manos might be on the horizon for 2026. I just used it once, I believe, and after waiting for several weeks to get into it, the beta testing. But I believe Versal it's such an incredible tool. I can't highlight it enough. And I believe Manos, simply on the way that Versal would just simply give you the prototype and you have to continue building it. Manos' promise was most likely the end-to-end build of whatever you would like to have. And I also believe it's maybe from an LLM perspective, not fully done yet. Maybe with GPT-5 on the horizon, maybe with a new Claude model or a combination of the two, it might be able to do that end-to-end. Gentlemen, which one others is worth mentioning? Did any other model really disappoint? ChatGPT?
I think the
4.5?
latest Llama, the Llama 4, it wasn't that great compared to the boost that you've been having from other models. But one of the things that I do have to give applause to Meta regarding that is they're not only focusing on big models, but on smaller models. And they're focusing, they're targeting that market. And not many big players are doing that.
SLMs, small language models. Also, Apple is actually pushing in this field. Maybe I can put the research here as well and into the description, mostly because their large models are not here yet. so they're
mostly because of that, yeah.
They're building the small ones and they're critiquing the reasoning capabilities. I think we talked about that last week. I'm really, really curious where this whole Apple endeavor ends up, if they're actually able to pivot to really this AI-ready world, Siri 2.0. I don't know if you guys, maybe you not, Bene. Joao, do you have an iPhone?
I do. And Siri is way worse than it should be by now. I mean, it's just, in today's world, Siri is ancient. It's like a bit worse than actually typing out what I want. Because it gets it wrong sometimes. And I think one of the things that also failed, not just in Apple, like in terms of industries that we were hoping they were going to get fully replaced by AI, was the creativity department. Like only the last model, like the VO2 model, VO3, I think it's VO2.
VO3, yeah.
VO3 model from Google was like actually very good at video, very good at like combining video and audio. And you've probably seen the videos and you've seen like that ad on the NBA final, most heavily coming out of VO3. That's fully AI. Like, and now that's, I think, the first production-ready video-capable model. Before you've had like Midjourney and you had a lot of video generators, but they would do like short clips, I think 5-6 seconds, and there's always something off about them. You could always tell there's a bit of AI in there, and VO3 is just something on a league of its own. So if we were in a month ago, then the video was already going to be one of those industries that was failing. But because of VO3, now it's not. So
it's still some months to go, though, in 2025. Brings me to the last question, and then we can wrap up the episode. Where do we land 6 months from today? What's the best guesses? New models or new tools? What's still missing? And then we can keep ourselves accountable in January 2026. But what could come that we have not seen today in the next 6 months?
I think from my side is I pivot and is the voice aspect not being fully used, and I think this has a lot of growth. And since VO3 was also released, this video voice aspect hasn't. I think we're on the phase of a lot of text-based things, and I think the next big thing that's going to shake a bit is that handle or device with the VR. But I don't think it's 6 months away. I think it's a bit more. But I think that's the next big thing.
I think for the first time, I almost agree with Benny. I usually just disagree, but like I want and I foresee in the future more voice-capable things. Amazon had a really big push for Alexa and like smart home devices a few years ago, and it was okayish. but it never really took off. Like, it never got mainstream. It was one of those techie things you used for a while. It was fun, then you stop using it. And I think now with LLMs, now with like good voice capable models that are coming out, and we expect them to come out and get better, we're gonna have Alexa 2.0. Maybe that's the next big bet from Amazon.
Okay, so I'm doing the absolute optimistic Elon Musk roadmap that I believe
He wants robots, people.
that XAI will be the best model by the end of the year. And for the first time, it will somewhat introduce a new way of thinking to humanity, which is the core goal of XAI in the first place. It will then link that knowledge to the Tesla Optimus robot, and including the Vision and Starlink, we have robotic workforces in 2026. So that's going to be the big announcement. I'm looking forward to not doing my dishes.
It's just
No, for me, that's one of the big things that I used to discuss with other people. Tesla is not a company of cars. Tesla is a company of gathering data. And Tesla gathered so much vision data and has so much data to train on. And I think they have one of the biggest hardware forces to train models.
Yeah, the H100s or 200s or Blackwell chips factories, let's call it like that in the meantime.
Future it's good, but at the same time, I'm a bit afraid of Elon. So
just a small little bit afraid of like that the billionaire.
I think it's sometimes it's great. I mean, not that we have a long debate at the end of the pod, pro or contra Elon. Just a visionary is usually a great notion. However, this person lays out the vision is the other thing, and how much we should believe and not believe. Great. I think that's a good moment to wrap up. Any last comments? Bene, are you ready for the reintegration after Brazil, or you're still suffering?
I still want to hear João because I interrupted him. So
no, I was just mocking Cyril because his vision for AI in the world is mostly just to replace doing the dishes and like household chores.
Fairly basic needs.
So it's a very ambitious vision, like in a wide spectrum of AI possibilities. But the final goal is usually mostly not doing dishes.
Exactly.
This is surprisingly harder to replace humans than we expected at the beginning.
So it's far easier to replace a senior software engineer than replace me doing the dishes.
Because our work is kind of virtual. It's not real work.
So what does that say about the software engineer these days? Great.
Well, we have a career path. In the back of the restaurant.
So there is still some work outputs to be done manually. Elman, thanks for episode 15, the retrospective episode of this year. Today we covered a lot of ground on technical tools, sales tools, ideation and creative tools, either built in-house or built or leveraged externally from very established startups and companies. Just for the audience, we shoot these episodes every single week, covering the latest and the most cutting-edge AI engineering topics. If that's something you want to see more of, consider dropping a comment for a question or subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, and or comment, and also follow on TikTok. Gentlemen, we see each other just in a few days from today for episode 16. That was it, and bye-bye.
See you around.